Our next two speakers will talk about aspects of the cooperative development agenda in the United States. We'll hear from both speakers, and then, as I just said, we'll take questions for all three of our first three speakers. The next speaker is Deb Trocha, and she chairs Cooperation Works, which is an association of cooperative development centers around the country. CW is working with NCBA to develop a national technical assistance program for cooperative development. I would say before Deb comes to the podium, she said, I have to follow her? Deb, please do.
That just wasn't fair. So I can build on what she has to say. She was quite eloquent in talking about the importance of cooperative development across the globe, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about our cooperative developments here in the United States. So what would a national system of cooperative development look like? This discussion has been occurring in the cooperative development community for years, but obviously we don't have an answer to that question yet. So last October, with Cooperation Works and NCBA, a group was formed to look at what would that system actually look like. What would it look like if we could put that on the ground? So since that time, we've held 6 meetings and have defined and agreed upon a mission. Now, as co-op folks, we all know how hard it is to get everybody on the same page and to come up with a mission that everybody can get behind. We've actually done that. So our mission is to create a shared vision for a resilient national system for cooperative technical assistance that includes both funding and accountability. And the operational objectives for our group include embracing an atmosphere of transparency and inclusion of the co-op community. So it's going to require all of us to make this happen. We want to create a system that's recognized by the cooperative community, by the community development community, and the general public as a trusted source of co-op development assistance. Now, we know that we're embarking on a multi-year process here. It's not going to happen overnight. And I just lost my place. And we know that this national system is going to require that many, many components and organizations come together and work together. It's not going to be run by a single entity, but it's rather going to be a strategic collaboration among partners who are engaged in cooperative development. We recognize that we are addressing a vision for our cooperative future. So how do we, as a cooperative movement, give back to help build our cooperative future? What does it mean? Who's going to give back? And what's our responsibility as a cooperative community to underwrite cooperative development to ensure a strong, viable cooperative future? And how are we going to be accountable for our success? So there always has to be that accountability at the end. Since our initial organizing meeting with Cooperation Works and NCBA, we've added additional voices to the table. We've invited representatives from different cooperative sectors to come to the table to make sure that we have as broad a perspective and as many voices as possible to look at developing this system. And some of the challenges that we recognize to creating the system are access to capital for startups. That's an issue no matter what kind of business that you're starting, and cooperatives are no different. What's the infrastructure that's going to drive the education and training for cooperative developers? If we're going to have a strong system, we have to have cooperative developers who have adequate training and education. And what's the accountability, again, for the resources provided for cooperative development? So as we continue to identify questions for further discussion and consideration, some of those questions we are directing to you, the cooperative community, and we need your help in defining and answering these questions. So what are the true barriers for cooperatives to invest in cooperative development? Why would you invest in new co-ops or growing existing cooperatives if there's not some return directly to the cooperative that's making that investment? Is there anything about this conversation that scares us as a cooperative community? Cross-sector financing is going to be a key element, but there, once again, has to be a benefit or value for the various co-op sectors to do this. So how do we build that? And once again, what are the metrics or the dashboard to measure cooperative financial health, the governance, membership participation, all those things that go into building accountability? How do we incorporate the blueprint as a way of creating some of the standards and parameters for cooperative development? Can the cooperative development centers that are already in existence be the development arm for some of these co-op sectors like the rural electrics or the credit unions, so some of those sectors that are already doing some development? Is there a way to integrate what the current sectors are doing with the cooperative development centers that are already in existence? How do we pay for common infrastructure? Who's going to do that? Where is it going to come from? Where's the money going to come from? And how are we going to be accountable for that? So there are lots of questions. Those are just a few that we've come up with. The conversation, as I said, is ongoing. But we think it's critical that all of us are part of that discussion from across all the co-op sectors, and we'll continue to seek your input and your guidance as we continue down this road. So if you've got questions, if you've got thoughts, insights, we welcome your input. Pat Sterner is the representative from NCBA, and there's Pat, who's working on this initiative with us. I'm the contact with Cooperation Works. Some of our other members are here today. So we encourage you to think about this, to think about what role you can play in your cooperative sector to help cooperative development, whether that's starting new co-ops from the ground up or helping to expand existing co-ops. So I appreciate your attention today and your consideration of helping us as we work together to build a cooperative development network across the country. Thank you.
Both Dame Green and Deb emphasized the importance of the availability of capital to cooperatives. Terry Simonette is President and Chief Executive Officer of Capital Impact Partners. Capital Impact Partners is a community development lender that supports the development of projects that improve access to health care and education, increases the availability of affordable housing, and enhances services to seniors. He's here today to talk about Capital Impact's cooperative development agenda. Terry?
Thank you. I'm really pleased to be here today and to follow Dame Green and Deb, because it's clear, I think, from the comments that they have made that we exist at a point in time where there's tremendous opportunity for cooperatives internationally, certainly tremendous need for the kind of stable participatory organizations that have developed for many decades and have done so much good work internationally. Certainly the same here in this country, decades of great work. I particularly liked Deb's mention of trying to connect the community development in the cooperative world, or maybe in Dame Green it's referred to as community welfare. But co-ops have really demonstrated their ability in a very basic way to provide goods and services to all incomes, and particularly low and moderate income communities. So that's one of the places that we want to focus. And I think the way we are described as an organization who's done cooperatives, invested in cooperative development for years, but have also been pretty successful at community development, and we are a community development financial institution. Let me first of all thank many of you for working with us on our new look. We have a new brand, try and present a different focus to the world, to really focus on people and innovation. We have the last year been looking to retool our cooperative development strategy. We're not satisfied that we have done enough, We believe that we have a track record and momentum in aggregating resources from many, many sectors and have been able to deliver those to low and moderate income communities, but co-ops have not been enough of a focal point, not just for us, but for public policymakers who believe that there are far better, more experienced approaches to delivering services at the community level. We don't believe that. They need to look harder. So we've been lending and working with cooperatives for over 30 years. Our primary niche, I think as many of you know, has been affordable housing, food, worker cooperatives, and then a few other niches. Along the way, we did become certified as a community development financial institution. We have assembled about $2 billion in capital, which we have put into communities across the country. I got this right? Let me go on to, we have delivered that capital into the sectors or the systems that we think day to day result in healthy communities, result in an ability for people to stay in their communities, and to grow families and hopefully for generations to come. One of the places we've done that work is in Detroit, and we have been in Detroit now for about the last 7 or 8 years. We have only been able to deliver probably around $70 or $80 million of capital in Detroit. All of that capital has been delivered in loans which are being repaid and resulting in the beginnings of the development of more viable communities. That may be hard to believe when you read the headlines from day to day and think about bankruptcy and the number of vacant houses in Detroit, the number of stoplights that don't work, the number of communities that have to provide their own fire protection, their own police protection. But this is about building block by block, and cooperatives have an important role to play in that building. Cornerstone Partnership. Some of you will remember the course we set out on about 7 years ago. We've been doing affordable housing cooperatives in this country for 30 years, limited equity cooperatives. The country decided in its great wisdom, and many of you know this better than I do, in 1986 to redirect the policy resources of this country in affordable housing into rental housing. That made it almost impossible for limited equity cooperatives, except in a few areas, to thrive. New York is obviously one of them, and Andy Riker is here having spent most of his life doing that work. 7 or 8 years ago, we, along with a number of people in the affordable housing community, kind of held our hands up and said, you're missing something here. You're missing the impact and potential value of cooperatives. So we brought the affordable housing community together, and that included the Ford Foundation, many of you affordable housing producers, and that started a conversation about, first of all, expanding the scope of shared equity housing to include limited equity cooperatives, land trust, and inclusionary zoning, which gave us a bigger body to deal with. And then ultimately our approach was, it really is a question of the facts. Where do cooperatives work? If they don't work, why have they not worked? And what can we do about it? And this whole process has been about creating a benchmarking system that everybody in the affordable housing industry is participating in, and ultimately getting down to the brass tacks of where do cooperatives work. And you might, I'm sure you can imagine, Andy Riker's heard this, Terry Lewis, Doug, others, that everyone wants to talk about the co-op that didn't work. And it's back to the bank that didn't work. Well, yeah, it was the wrong developer, it was the wrong market, it was the wrong time in the market. We will get down to the facts in Cornerstone Partnership. We have been doing community health care work across the country, along with the National Cooperative Bank, for 30 years. This is a system that provides primary care to about 30 million people in the country who are uninsured or underinsured, and again, is one of those critical systems. If it's not in place, the community in which you live has a number of problems, from not being able to take care of its people to provide the kind of ongoing services that keep us healthy and well, hopefully wealthy too. This has been a big focus of our effort over time. The Greenhouse Project and Village to Village, I think many of you know that one of the things we've focused on for many, many years are elders. We believe that as an elder, you have the right to choices, and that includes the right to stay in your home and to get the kind of support necessary to do that. We also believe that if you are at the end of your life, you too have the right to live in an environment where you're there to grow. You may be 85, 90, 92. You may have every kind of physical issue in the world. We believe that there's an opportunity for further growth. And without going into the details of the Greenhouse Project, where we're now in 26 states, have done this on 50 campuses, I think we're providing choices for elders, and particularly low-income elders that otherwise wouldn't have a choice. So this is just a few of our numbers. About $2 billion, and you can see some of the numbers associated with health care, jobs, affordable housing, et cetera. So, back to where we are today. We have continued to finance cooperatives, but obviously, without the kind of support that other forms of ownership are getting, both in terms of policy, technical assistance, and capital, cooperatives on their own, organizations on their own, without the support, for example, of a national technical assistance delivery system, without resources, well, of course, they're going to have difficulty starting, just like any small business that didn't have the support of the Small Business Administration or the millions of dollars, billions of dollars that are poured in to supporting small businesses. So we believe, along, I think, with all of you, that that is the course. We believe that we have an opportunity now that we've never had before. You know, we do not have a bully pulpit, but we do have relationships with the largest banks, the largest pension funds in the country, all the large foundations, and we believe there's an opportunity to connect the dots better than we have before between the issues in this country and community development across the country, urban and rural, and the power, the track record of cooperatives in a variety of sectors that, again, go back to those important systems in every community that must be operating and connecting and coordinating in order to have a healthy community. So our focus for the next year, and by the way, this focus is very much involved the leadership of our organization and our board. We've brought some new people into the organization, and we think it's a time to really stand back, assess, and focus our resources in a way that, again, results in more resources for cooperatives. Sorry, I can't see all that. We will continue to do the direct lending that we have been doing in the sectors in which we've been involved. Listen, we have 3 organizations out there in the country that are cooperative financial service organizations. They are doing great work. It's the toughest work in the world. They are banking small cooperatives, startup cooperatives. That's inefficient work. That is work with high risks. And these are organizations that also have to worry about, as their stakeholders grow and strengthen, they end up going someplace else. And that means they have to start over again. Are these organizations subsidized? No. Are they trying to invest their resources, whatever resources they have, in the development of new cooperatives? They are. We need to give those organizations more support. We don't think we've done enough, and that's something we want to try and do better. Listen, there are all kinds of places in the country where you can go for ongoing startup advice for cooperatives. We just want to make sure that we're providing support to some of those best programs. So we are looking hard at some of the surveys being done and information about technical assistance resources. We want to make some decisions about trying to support some of those organizations. They, too, are doing critical work. It's hard work and it's effective work. It's not work that we can do or some of you can do, but we can certainly support them. Pardon me. I think all of us because of what's going on in our country, believe there are greater opportunities for democratically structured worker-owned cooperatives. That's something we've been doing for a long time. We have been talking to many of you over the last few months because I think we all believe that worker-owned cooperatives can certainly do more than they have been doing. It really does, back to one conversation, it really does take some connecting the dots between all of us. You know, we don't want to wind up splintering our resources. We've fractured our resources before. We've got to stay together on that. We, I think, along with the National Cooperative Bank, intend to be involved in that process and providing our resources to support it. This is all about, in addition to the things we've talked about, it's all about people's perception and branding. And we think we can make a small contribution there. I've just given you one example. We think there are jewels of experience out there where people have been innovative and creative and bootstrapping and started new co-ops. And we believe that should get the same kind of attention as the Co-op 100 gets. I don't know if it's the Co-op 20 or it's the Co-op 10 or it's the Co-op 50, but that's one of the conversations we'd like to have with many of you to talk about how we could use our resources together, maybe on an annual basis, to highlight and focus on those organizations that have really done something that we should all be looking at, replicating, and hopefully to be energized around.